Hey, everybody. Welcome to May's Lunch with Haley on sales automation. All right, guys, let's get started. I'm excited. This one's a good one. And like, again, it's like a, season ending episode cliffhanger where we think we're going to go last week, but, sweeps is this week. And we just decided to just keep you in suspense. So thanks for joining us. This one, we're going to talk about sales automation. So excited to have Billy on talking about this. He's such a guru in automation. Has been doing some great things on content creation, talking about it, just getting people excited about automation and just keeping up with our level up for sales theme this quarter. What we're doing at Haley is, we're cheeky around waking up sleeping clients, but it's really, that's the focus right now, is trying to figure out, with job orders declining and clients, taking a look at other options, like what can you do and to really, solidify the base of your client base, but also, upsell, cross sell, look into new clients or new verticals. So sales automation can do that for you. So we figured, let's put our heads together here and see what we can do to talk about this stuff. So we're going to keep this pretty loose. Pretty much when it comes to, just kind of talking through, just want to make sure that this is, just kind of covering everything. And then hopefully you come back with some actionable tips. I know Billy will definitely make sure he does that. So let me introduce him. And I'm sure you guys have seen him. He's the Terminator. So I'll let you kind of go through it, Billy.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Excited to be here. So Billy Davis, and kind of give you a little bit of a brief intro to myself and my background. So I've been automating in the staffing space since 2016. I was the first full-time Herefish employee and actually was a Herefish client before becoming an employee. And also another fun fact, I was actually an early Sense client as well, even back, I think it's 2015, 2016 days. So and even before Sense and Herefish existed, I was doing some of my own API programming and stuff. So I have the fun moniker of automating and staffing before staffing automation existed. So as you can imagine, I've had a variety of roles kind of throughout my automation experience. At one point, I was director of all things implementation success support. I've also done a stint in the product org as a product manager. And now currently I'm doing enterprise customer success around automation, AI, and the talent platform. I've done about 300 implementations of automation, worked with about 1,000 different companies. So I love to take that experience and try to distill it and help others along their own automation journeys from a thought leadership, content creation standpoint. And linked up with Jeff years and years ago, and it's always fun to talk shop. And yeah, we're looking forward to today.
Not many of us, so no, it's great to be able to connect on this one. So awesome, and definitely, yeah, if you're not following Billy, follow him. He's going to show you how you can do that, but at the end of this, but definitely follow him if you want to know the tips and tricks and shortcuts and just great strategies. Definitely follow him. So I am not robotic in any way, so just bald, and but I'm the CMO of Haley Marketing. I've been working in automation. I remember my first automation stint in 2004. I was working for a credit union with with an automation platform called Market Tracks for financial institutions, and it was like SQL based, and it's crazy. But I've been in staffing, I think now 7 years. Started at Able, which is now part of Bullhorn. Then I was on the staffing side for about 4 years at Talent Launch, which is a national or a nationwide network of independently operated staffing firms all around the U.S. And really what we're doing now is, I saw such a huge opportunity with automation and being able to help clients. I'm sure, Billy, you can attest to the same thing. I mean, there's so much we don't know what we don't know, and where to start, and all these kind of just blockers that it stinks because there's so many benefits to it. So, what we do is we focus on automation really on the SMB and mid-size clients. Same thing. I've consulted with hundreds of clients and, on different automation strategies. Obviously, Herefish, now Bullhorn Automation, Sense. I've done HubSpot, ActiveCampaign, Marketo, some crazy ones that nobody's ever heard of. But I remember Unica. I think it was one of 4 marketing automation platforms in like 02, 03. And now there's probably 400 of them. So needless to say, got enough experience between the two of us here to really talk shop. So we're going to definitely get to that. What I thought would be helpful, and when Billy and I kind of talked about this, is sort of setting the stage. And I personally love the grid report. I love, the insights that you can get from it. So I think it's helpful to kind of talk about, again, why are we talking about sales automation? We know sales it's now turning to sales in terms of what you're trying to do. But I think there are some great trends. And Billy, I'm going to let you take this since this is all part of Bullhorn with
Yeah,
you.
yeah, for sure. And I think the grid survey is obviously a great way to get kind of the insights, a pulse on what's happening kind of throughout the staffing industry, and you can slice and dice that and get a lot of good insights. So just want to highlight a few of those for you here. So this is a data point around the top priorities for staffing firms in 2023. I think that the past couple of years has been a really kind of unique situation in which kind of the candidate short market was really the priority, and for the first time, kind of winning new business wasn't as high as it has been historically. But now we see kind of business development and sales kind of going again up towards the top. So just a couple that I want to highlight here is obviously the number one priority is winning new clients. So 40% of respondents listed that as a top priority. And then number 5 was focusing on client relationships at 27%. So 2 of the top 5, very, very relevant to, the kind of the sales business development side of things. So that kind of wraps up the top priorities. And then we're going to look at kind of the top challenges that companies are facing. So obviously kind of obstacles and challenges, it's helpful to know kind of what's going on in the industry and kind of how you can kind of craft solutions to solve those things. So, a couple to kind of, focus in on here, obviously on the obstacle side, you see multiple kind of client and business sales kind of relevant things. So, the increased client churn, being at 10% of a kind of obstacle that people are saying, that 15% lack of client communication, I think is one that really stands out to me, especially from an automation opportunity standpoint, because so many times, from a manual communication standpoint, that's where a lot of those gaps and delays or kind of lack of opportunity comes in.
Are you hearing, Billy, real quick, are you hearing, because I'm hearing this, clients ghosting staffing firms, once they submit a couple candidates, and like, which is so weird. I've heard that a couple times in talking to clients where they're like, yeah, the clients just aren't getting back to us and we're trying to stay in front of them.
Yeah, I've heard some cases of that. I think like one of the things, that's why it's so important to have that relationship, to develop that partnership, right? Because obviously if you're just trying to like introduce, make a quick placement, that's going to be a very different scenario than if you have a long-standing relationship, you're developing that over time, you're showing yourself as a true partner, things along those lines. Yeah. And then moving quickly, just to highlight a couple of the challenges here, obviously like increased competition. So kind of market is feeling that pressure of trying to differentiate themselves, provide quality offerings, and then that 12%, the inability to reach potential clients. I think that's a really interesting one. I know it's a subject matter expertise area of Jeff, as far as, what we're seeing, what he's seeing on the marketing side of maybe some of the old methods of outreach, of business development aren't as effective as they used to be. So what's kind of some of the new age things that you can utilize with technology to then kind of bridge that gap and reach potential clients easier?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, there's a remote factor in this, they're remote workers. So it's like, you're testing out everything. I mean, I think it's one of those where it's right for like an integrated campaign. What can you do online and offline and sort of test and measure what works? Because in some cases, email automation, sales automation, obviously a love of ours, is going to work really well. But in others, it may be that mix of direct mail, or some sort of, just something that will get in front because they're inundated by emails, or it's going to promotions or other, or whatever those inboxes, the junk inboxes now. So it's such a fascinating time to try to figure out how to reach potential clients. And I'm hearing that all the time. Like, I need new business. And I'm like, okay, everybody does. So cool. Awesome. Well, so yeah, obviously we know the challenges. I'm sure you guys out there are seeing these challenges, seeing, some of these obstacles, and, obviously we talked about them. And I think, to take the between two ferns approach in this is the best way. I think, we can kind of talk about this stuff is really just to go back and forth and kind of talk about, we have some topics queued up and talk through like, what would we do if we were running this? What are we seeing? And I think just being able to have that discussion point makes sense. So to kick it off, and Billy, I'm going to start with you, is just, why the shift to sales automation?
Yeah, for
And
sure. Yeah, and just a reminder for everyone too, if you have questions or comments or
yeah,
things that come up,
please.
feel free to put them in the chat. We have some time allocated at the end to make sure we can get
Yep,
to as many as possible. Even if we run out of time, both Jeff and I
we'll
will
answer
make
them.
sure we'll get to them. We'll get back. We'll make sure that you get your answers.
Yeah,
Yeah. So kind of looking at the shift to sales automation, I think what we've seen obviously from some of the data and some of the feedback that we're seeing is I see that kind of a tighter economic environment has kind of shrunk some job demand. And then so, it's, before in a candidate short market, clients were easy to find because everybody was looking for candidates. And now, especially in certain niches and industries that are kind of shrinking a bit, those opportunities also are shrinking a bit. So then it makes that business development sales side more in demand. And then the other point here, I just want to make sure everyone's kind of aware of is that, if you've been around and kind of gone through a few of these macro cycle environments, you understand it's cyclical. So these things ebb and flow. And, so even though sales and business development is now kind of a prime focus, don't neglect the other side, the candidate side, because the companies that are the best positioned right now haven't neglected sales and BD. They've been doing it throughout, even in a candidate, driven market. So, understand that these things flip back and forth. So certainly, there's times to kind of prioritize or, optimize things, from an outcome perspective. But ideally, you want to make sure you're kind of well-rounded and you're well prepared. So when the market inevitably flips, you're not scrambling to then try to again, get the results quickly that you need.
yeah. I think, you're so spot on. I mean, the companies that I see success of, they're the ones that have like that engine's running on both sides, and it all starts with process, and it starts with like, we know our recruiting process, we know our sales process, we know the transition between the two. And I always say, like, you can't fit, you know the process to technology. You got to fit the technology to the process, and you have to have that down. And I think, it's, if you start and you sway all the way to one side, you're obviously going to neglect the other side of things. And I think, to my first point, it's funny, like, I think I was speaking about a year ago, and I was speaking about sales automation. I think it was probably the right around this time last year, or June or something like that. And people looked at me like I had like four heads. And they're like, because I was like, oh, you got to be hitting sales automation. You got it, like, this. Now's the time. Solidify that base. We'll talk about some of the campaigns that we think, are really hitting the mark right now. But I was talking about it last year, and they were like, no, 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 candidate automation. It's sexy. It's cool. Like, we can do all these things. And I do think that, to my first bullet, like, there's been such a focus on candidate side because it's immediate. I mean, there are some cool things to it. And, I think that process or that service delivery is just easier to understand than sales. But, like, I feel like sales has been an afterthought, especially in automation. Like, every panel, every speaker, everything you look at outside of 2023, like anytime before, has always been candidate. And I think there's just, when you do all of that, you kind of like, oh yeah, I guess you could do automation for sales. Yeah, I guess that's right. And now's the time where everybody seems to be scrambling, and it's like, okay, how do I do it? I have a platform. What do I do now? And you're like, well, I mean, you could have been ready to roll. To Billy's second bullet, you could have been ready to roll and balanced on each side. But and I think there's a relearning of sales and sales process. I think, it's one of those things where if you don't have the process down, or maybe it was just easy to get orders, you didn't have to do much. There wasn't any finessing the last couple years. And so now you're like, now we have to grind and hustle. And so, I think that there's like, well, I don't have enough salespeople, or I have to get new salespeople. I have to train them. Like, there's a learning curve, but with automation, there's not, like, so what can we do to do that? And I think that's, that's forcing this sort of shift over. And then I think the remote work, and I think we mentioned that, it's just what you have this whole new world, like you don't necessarily do drop offs. Some companies you can't, they're working remote. Like how do you navigate, from a screen to an in real life, meeting? And what do you do? And how do you use automation for that when you can't just knock on doors, or maybe if you do, nobody's there? So I think it's such a huge shift now over, and I think people are just trying to figure it out and ramp up as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
That's
that's
just my
such
opinion.
a great point on that last one, Jeff. Actually, it reminds me of a story back in our staffing days. Um, so the staffing company I worked on, we used to physically drop paychecks off to the client sites to hand out to
Yep.
our candidates. And that was immediately a client touch point. And oftentimes we get job orders, what's going on. Like, but then when we moved to kind of a direct deposit, paperless, that kind of thing, all of a sudden we lost that client connection. So then we had to make sure we were still doing that, finding opportunities to meet, go on site, go on person with the client. So it's just, yeah, especially as you kind of get more efficient and adopt, you got to ensure that you're still doing the right things.
Right. Because it always comes down to that activities and efforts. Like that's all we would say is like activities and efforts. Have you made the call? Have you made the drop off? Have you done this? Well, automation can do that, and it should be counted as part of that. It's just how do you set it up and what does that look like? And just taking the time to do that is key. So yeah, definitely. Well, what's working in sales automation? And you're the guru of this stuff. So I mean, you've got all the cool words. So definitely.
Yeah, I'll highlight a few of the kind of the key areas that I see, working really robustly for clients that are optimizing it. So I think the first result that really drives some great sales automation is just that increased data quality piece. And of course,
Yeah.
speaking to any marketer, right? A marketer's best dream is a database that's updated. You can segment, who your personas are. You can create these nice journeys and life cycles. So all of that starts with kind of quality data underneath. So the better data that you have, the better you can segment, and then the better that you can kind of guide someone through your sales process, your sales funnels, because you know where they're at in their buying journey, and you can kind of nudge, remind, and ensure that they're kind of progressing through that. The other component, of course, is a tenet of automation just in general, is just around increasing efficiency. So, like a couple examples of that would be just even like an example, like a concept like a drip campaign, where you're sending, a series of messages spaced out over time. You can even interweave other types of reminders, communications, et cetera. But it's something that you're ensuring you're kind of following a best practice consistently, and that your team can get behind, but also you really ramp up on the efficiency side of things. And then, the second side is kind of teeing up your sales team to let them know what they should do, when they should do it, and then how they should do it. So you can reinforce those best practices. And then obviously you don't have to worry about automation forgetting, or, automation being sick, or, any of those things. You can ensure that it's happening consistently. So you can, kind of standardize sales excellence throughout your organization. And
Yeah.
then the
What's
last, oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, what's interesting about that is some of the clients that I've even talked to, and is this that there's actually a bigger emphasis in some of these clients with the automation for notifications, like an
Yeah.
internal process, almost internal sales management, like you said. Like I've done so many of those where it's literally just task, did you complete, reminder. And it's like, don't even go to the client. Like, let's just make sure our salespeople are doing the things that you said. And I'm spot on with that one, because that's what I've built so many of those now, because they're like, Jim, the sales guy, just needs to know what to do. So
Right.
can automation help him know what to do? And I think don't lose value in that, because I think that's a huge thing, if, to be able to put, as a use case for automation. Sorry, Billy.
Especially when you're, no, it's great point. Especially when you're starting out or kind of ramping up. Because obviously
Yeah.
outbound messages to clients, when you're a little shaky about, is this the right segment? Is this automation going to do what I want it to do? Right. That's a little bit of a higher risk. Whereas if you're just notifying your internal people, if you didn't set up something correctly,
Yep.
if something's triggering in a wrong way, it's a much better scenario from a risk standpoint.
Yeah. 100%.
And then the last point here is just all around using data. So, I'm a data kind of geek and nerd at heart. So I love data-driven insights. So, like, I think that's really an optimal way to get the most revenue and efficiency out of your sales process. So, being able to answer questions like, who are your best clients? Who are your most efficient clients? So looking at what is the effort to revenue ratio, with your client base. Then looking at the flip side, who are your least efficient clients? Looking at volume, and then using that data to kind of rank and prioritize where you're spending your efforts, your time, and your recruiters, insight through the process to help drive revenue. And then looking at some kind of KPIs within your own life cycles and flows. So, what is your, send out to interview to placement ratios? What are your sales submission, cycle times? What are your average turnover rates? What's kind of your average retention or time on assignment? So like all of those things, are great things to know from a data perspective. But then obviously with automation, you can be prescriptive. You can try to improve those things, then track and measure to see how things are going, and then experiment to see what are ways that you can do to make those things even better.
Well, and to your point, like I've actually worked with a client that once you get that information, those ratios, you're using it in your marketing. Because I think there's a whole benchmarking around this. Like, like you were talking about, from, application to submission to placement, like what do those ratios look like? And again, if you have a great ratio, like if we're going to send you 4 candidates and you always are going to pick one of 4, like that's a great thing to say. Like we're not going to waste your time with 20 candidates and you got to see all of these people. We're going to give you, every time we give you 4, you're going to pick 1. And so when you look at, from a learning curve to a, what's the lost productivity of having that position open for X amount of days, you can flip that if you're using it right and use it in the automation. And I think that's, it's kind of the chicken or the egg. Like, what do you do to make sure that you get it, but then also you want to use it, but then how do you use it unless you get it? But I think on my side, what's working is, I've had a lot of clients just talk about, I've got this sales force and right now they're almost focused on account management, solidifying the base. So and I'm always saying, use automation to qualify those prospects. Use it as a salesperson. Like if you use it right, you're able to reach so many prospects. You're able to reach so many inactive clients. There's so much opportunity there. Because let your salespeople work on their A prospects, A clients. They want to have that relationship, but there's a lot of things that automation can do. Well, I'll talk about a couple of them, obviously, is, to be able to reach that one-to-many approach. Like what can you do? Like if you're pulling names from Zoom Info or you're grabbing, names from an event or something like that, don't just call them and smile and dial and do all that, which I know is hard right now. Put them into an automation campaign that basically warms them up. And, because that way, would you rather talk to 10 semi-interested people or call 100 uninterested people? And, and that's what I think when you look at this, because, there's no shortage of contact names in your database, whatever you're using for your CRM, but it's like, well, how do you reach them? That's automation. Use it, make it a salesperson and let them be almost like a BDR, or an SDR, let them, build the quality. And I think that's what I see is working. And we've had great results, in terms of what we put that in there and how we've structured that to be able to let the salespeople get some inbound leads, maybe some warm outbound leads. So I think it's working really well. And then, I do think, to Billy's point on, data, I think there is a focus, almost like how candidate engagement and automation, there was that focus on better data. Well, if I don't have every field, with actual information, it's not going to work. I do think that that's moving over, and there is a focus on not just data, but also sales process. I've been doing a ton with what's your sales process? Are your statuses reflective of your sales funnel? Like that's the number one thing I tell clients is like, you got to adjust your statuses to meet your sales funnel. Because from there, it's just like, B2B automation 101, is that you're able to do some of that stuff, but there's a focus on that, which I think is great. I think they're seeing like, oh, yep, okay, I can actually use this and it makes sense. So, all right, well, we talked about what's working, and, a lot of things are working. A lot of stuff is great. A lot of new people. I know you're probably dealing with this where, because you guys have been really taking on a lot of new clients with Bullhorn Automation is, there's a lot of I don't know what I don't know, and there's a lot of like, well, we're going to try it, we're going to see what happens, and or we're skeptical and it's paralysis by analysis. But I think it's fair to talk about, what are things to avoid? What are some stuff that we're seeing that, not necessarily is going to stop you from doing any sort of automation, because we would tell you don't, figure it out. But I think, there's just things that I would definitely make sure you had buttoned up. And I think I'll start with this one is just the buy-in. I'm a huge buy-in person. It's probably because I've spent most of my career trying to sell, ideas and dreams and all this other stuff. And I think that, and I've worked with so many sales teams, both on the company side and then also vendor, and not getting that buy-in from sales or leadership, you're sunk. It's a non-starter. And I will say that not even from a sales automation standpoint, from an automation. If you don't have buy-in, true buy-in, not just this is cool, let's do it. I think it's a done deal. Like you're not going to do anything from this thing. And I do think that we see that. I do see that in clients, is that it's almost a short-term fix, but I'm not really focused on it. And if you don't have this buy-in from a program, like it is a part of your tech stack, and your salespeople believe in it, because that's the other thing too, is that they believe in automation is helping them sell more, you're done. It's not going to work. So I know that's my biggest, from the top, that's what I would definitely do, is you got to be able to get buy-in. What do you think?
And I think, and the pitfalls to avoid, I think this is where learning from someone who has the experience or is kind of, farther along the path than you is really helpful, because this is the stuff that if you can not experience it yourself, but learn, like you avoid a lot of the pain. And then you can kind of leapfrog to kind of a higher results, better optimization, better experience by avoiding some of these things. So one of the things that I see, especially on the sales side, is around automation is a wonderful thing, but you also don't want to be 100% automated, too robotic. So especially when you're trying to build a relationship or build that partnership approach, you need to mix in personalized communications and touch points. Because if you just, let one of your clients go down on an automated, reach out campaign, that's going to be far less effective than if you mix in with that reminders, touch points. Hey, let's make sure we do a client visit. Let's pick up the phone, call the client, ask about X, Y, or Z. Also, include those best practices in there. But what I found is, if you can find that ideal blend between automation and personalization, that's where you'll get kind of the best results.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there is that automation, human automation, like handoff that needs to happen. Definitely. I think, I don't know that, and to that point, I think, as a marketer, I know a lot of us, tend to be over marketingized when we write our stuff. And I think there is I'll even guide clients away from a design email, a design-based email, from a salesperson versus just a text-based one. Look like it's supposed to be from an inbox. I think that's such a key thing, is less marketing, more human. Even the way that you're typing, I know you can't match it one-to-one because there are some, dynamics to it and making sure, but I think you can definitely say this is how somebody would type, it's not going to be perfect with, a thesaurus right next to you saying all this stuff. I mean, it needs to be a human approach, quick hit, just following up. And to that point, I'll take the next one too, because I think it fits with it, is relevancy. I think there's a relevant factor, and I tell this to clients all the time, is if you're doing a message, if a message is launching after something, whether it's a node action type or a status or, something indicating a meeting, or, we're now working together, something, you've got to make that relevant connection. I think that's so huge, because you're tipping off automation right away if you're not doing that. I see that a lot, where it's just, I'm reaching out to you, and it's no, hey, we had a great meeting. I enjoyed learning more about your company. If there's anything we can do, let me know. I just want to, attach this quick sheet, overview sheet about it. And at least there's something there. Or even when you're looking at campaign that's maybe 6 months long, at 90 days, hey, it's been a couple months since we last chatted. I just those relevant little things that would intro on the messaging side, I think are very powerful. So that's what I would definitely, make sure you avoid just a, hey, how are you? Like put in those relevancy.
Yeah, and in the messages themselves, another thing I've seen is you have to be very careful with how you're leveraging and using texting on the sales
Yes.
side, and especially the prospecting client side. Like, you have to really make sure that the person that you're sending the text message to is expecting it. It's a preference of theirs. There are some cases where that's warranted and wanted. So it's also a nice way where you can ask for like communication preferences and frequency, like that kind of thing, and then use that data to then, communicate in the right way. But I've seen some horror stories of clients just mass text messaging and then kind of seeing the repercussions of that from their client or prospect base. So always be cautious with text messaging, especially on the sales client side. And then the other point, I think something that Jeff said earlier, which I really like, and I see it all the time, is like you have to provide value in your messaging to prospects. You can't lead off with, hey, do you want to do business with me? Or let book a meeting with me, because they could not even know anything about you. You haven't built kind of that equity, that trust factor there. So, think about the ways that you can provide value kind of upfront in your prospecting campaigns of what are you seeing in the market? What are some kind of candidate, indicators or data points that you could share that would be helpful? Like using some of those KPIs, those metrics that Jeff mentioned earlier. Like, what are some of those things that you can share? And then as you get farther down that cadence, then you can start having a soft call to action of, hey, if you're interested in finding out more, you want to talk about your specific business needs, here's my link, kind of go from there. But that whole kind of mantra of give before you have an ask will always kind of lead to establishing a better relationship and ultimately better conversion rates.
That's nuts. I was going to say give, ask. And like, I'm like, oh man, no, it's like I have ESPN. So yeah. So, I mean, but it is true. I mean, and I've seen it both sides of the aisle, recruiting and sales messages where it's like, you want a job, you want a job, you want a job, you want a job, or hey, you need somebody, you need somebody, you need somebody, you need somebody. I mean, prime the pump a little bit, get them interested, talk about them, don't talk about yourself, but use that like welcome series or something where it's hitting the pain points and it's getting people to understand, what are they missing, and are you the answer to that? But yeah, the one thing I would definitely say, I guess I'll finish the two out and then let you run with the differentiate. But I think, I get back to using the CRM properly. If you don't use it, and I know plenty that don't, like, I know a lot of them, a lot where they're like, I don't even use anything with statuses. I just use all tear sheets, all this stuff. I'm like, you're not going to be able to do proper automation. I'm just going to tell you right now. And I stress that so much. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but it's a tough one. And then I think expecting automation to drive leads. It's kind of like what you talked about, like, running an automation without any personalization or any reach outs. Like automation alone, yeah, it'll drive some interest, but it's a consistency factor. Like there's other things that need to be done, and to expect it right away to drive leads for you, I think is really tough. There's some special circumstances, but I think it's really tough to expect that.
Yeah, and I mean, automation is kind of an amplifier. So, and I know this is a soapbox you get on often as well. Of
Oh yeah,
make sure you have your brand in a good spot. Make sure you have your process, your systems in a good spot, and obviously, then technology can help amplify that. It's not a magic solution. But the last one I have is don't sound like everyone else, and this kind of goes back to some of the obstacles or challenges of of increased competition. But so being truly different, but being different in a beneficial way. So, I when I think of this, the immediate thing that comes to mind is like, your recruiting website, like the value propositions of like, we'll work hard for you. You can trust our combined, 80 years of recruitment experience amongst our team. Our database has X amount of people in it. Like the things that you see over and over and over again. Obviously the clients are seeing that over and over again. So what are the ways that you can be creative to differentiate, to kind of stand out, to provide kind of a unique value proposition for your clients and kind of be a breath of fresh air as they're evaluating options and looking for a true partner.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think that's such a huge thing. It's we provide better service, and it's like, okay, cool. But are you solving problems? So,
Yeah.
all right, let's get to the fun part. You and I can go back and forth on this one. So, our top 5 list. So top sales automation campaigns we think are working right now, or at least either that are working now, or definitely we would be trying right now. So I'm gonna let you kick it off, and then we'll go back and forth on this. So you're number one.
Yeah, we got to combine 10 great ones here. So
I think so.
This would be definitely a shortcut to achieving some great results. So my first one up here is one of my favorite campaigns. I've seen this be used over and over again, really successfully, is re-engaging former clients that you've done business with in the past that you're not currently doing business with today. So something like, have you had a placement or a job order with them X amount of time in the past, but then you haven't had one in the recent 6 months, 3 months, 9 months, whatever timeframes you want to define. But if you do this properly, again, you can kind of have a drip campaign where you're just reaching out. The goal is to just stay top of mind, and just, remind them you're here for them, how you can help them. Obviously you have an established relationship already, but the outcome of doing this properly is you can get a perpetual result of inbound warm leads of people you've already worked with, already have a relationship with. So it's a fantastic revenue and efficiency sales automation.
Yeah, definitely. I think my number one right now is that it's to your point about the not automation only, but mixing in the personalization. Is I think I've seen great results in response rate as well as meetings in this passive, I guess you could call it prospect drip campaign, but there's post sales efforts. So maybe you're using a system that you're doing an outreach system for, or maybe you're doing a human, prospecting side of things. Well, if they don't bite, then what do? You forget them and you move on. Kind of like the candidates that apply, and then you reach out to a certain percentage, and the rest kind of just are there. I think with this one is putting in, maybe your sales process is 4 weeks where you're heavily, engaging with them. If they don't do anything, put them in a passive drip campaign, and stay in front of them every 30 days. You'll be amazed, because you know what? That 4 weeks of maybe they don't have a need, but don't stop selling to them or marketing to them just because they're out of they're out of the system. Like we're good. Just put them in that natural phase. That's where automation is. And I mean, I've seen, 35% open rates. I've seen, a good 10% response rate of like, yeah, tell me more. And I think that's a great one, because it kind of mixes that human and automation. So, all right, you're number 2.
Yeah, this use case is around something I've seen be extremely successful and had success with it personally as well, where proactively marketing superstar candidates to clients. So, like the first thing, and this, if you know this information, you're already a step ahead of most. But in order to figure out what type of candidate would be a superstar for a client, you have to ask those questions and do that discovery to figure out what are the hard to find skill sets, what are the things they're always hiring for. Like one of our favorite questions in a talking with a client was, talk to me about a background of a candidate that if we meet, you'll drop what you're doing and want to interview. So, and then you can log that information. You want to obviously contextualize it, pass it amongst your team. You can even put alerts in your system to flag if someone with that kind of background does, pop up in a re-engagement campaign or get entered to your system. But I've seen results up to 60 or 70% interview success rate of presenting proactively a candidate like this to a company that doesn't even have an opening, but they still want to interview the person because it's like ideal fit. And even if they don't want to, it's a very flattering use case, because you're telling the client you're hearing what they want, you're understanding what they want, you want to, you're driving that partnership. So even if you don't kind of get to an outcome of an interview or a placement, it's still something that drives a variety of really positive outcomes.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen that work really well. So my number 2 is kind of like what Billy said for his number 1, which is inactive client check-in. I think you could do this as a one-hit check-in where they reach a certain point. Maybe it's 9 months. Maybe it's a year since their last placement. And you're just they're not necessarily dormant, but they're getting there. And you could do this as a one-touch, and I've seen it as a one-touch check-in. I've also seen it as a series, where it's an email series and it just kind of stays in front of them. But, the biggest thing is there's relevancy. You've been able to put somebody to work there and you have a relationship. And so you use that to just say, hey, what's going on? What's happening? And I've seen response rates of up to like 35% in coming back and saying, yeah, you know what? Now I think about it, I do need something. So, that's
Wow.
a great one because again, it's not a cold prospect. You've worked with them. It's just a matter of staying in front when sometimes your salespeople, it's hard. They don't have that, task, on a sticky note somewhere. And so you can just put something in where they reach that threshold and then it goes out. So, all right, you're number 3.
Yeah, this one is kind of a category of kind of automations that you can kind of put together, but it's all around kind of shortening and optimizing the submission and sales process. So like you were talking about, using statuses to indicate what's happening along either the prospect journey or even kind of the job fulfillment journey, right? But obviously if you have those things in place, then all of a sudden those become great automation triggers to though, like, did we send out a candidate, but then we haven't gotten feedback for a day or 2 days? Let's have a reminder go out to the job owner, the candidate owner, maybe even the client contact, to just a soft reminder of, hey, we sent this out a couple of days ago. What do you think? Just things to ensure that there's no long delays in the process. Because as a adage goes, time kills all deals, right? So if you can shorten that time to fill, that cycle, you're going to get a lot better conversion rates. Your efficiency is going to go up, and also your revenue is going to go up. And then lastly, the best benefit of all, you're going to provide a better experience. So not only on the client side, but the candidate side as well. So I think this one is something that if you optimize it, right, there's just so many good things that happen throughout the business that also lead to ripple effects. Like you're going to be able to get more referrals, more testimonials, better satisfaction scores. So like, ensuring that, you're shortening the time as much as you can, following up with things is a great automation use case.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. I think again, it's that ghosting side of things where you're providing value and just a quick check-in, just a nudge. My number 3, we talked about it, is welcome series. I mean, I've seen this a lot where, to your point of winning new clients is a big thing right now. This is a priority. So a lot of staffing firms are buying lists, or they're looking at databases like ZoomInfo, Seamless, Clearbit, all these. They're just bringing names in, LinkedIn, wherever. And so I would not recommend reaching out to them with a LinkedIn message or anything like that. That's a great complimentary thing to do, but bringing them in and putting them into just a cold welcome series, cold outreach that just kind of talks about, again, the problem solution. Don't talk about you, talk about them. And just have a welcome series that you can at least get some warm leads out of it. And that's the point, is that out of the 300 prospects that you have, maybe 50 are, they've opened, they've clicked, they've indicated some interest. And so focus on those. Don't focus on the 300. And that's done really well. Again, you don't expect much from this one because it is cold prospects, but this is a great way to help hone in your sales team and prioritize some of those prospects. So I would definitely do that one. All right, you're number 4.
Yeah, so this one is I think something that it's a really cool outcome, and it's not something that kind of jumps off the paper of when you think of automation up front, but standardizing the client information that candidates receive. So especially if you're operating in a contingent model where one individual client might be working with multiple staffing firms, the complaint will be, well, then the candidates that we receive might not have the same information, be prepared for an interview. They don't know about the company like they should, right? But with automation and setting this up in the right way, you can ensure that 100% of the candidates that kind of go through this process are getting information standardized about that client. And then you can partner with the client to make sure it's the right information. So like examples I've seen here, like if there's a video series or a YouTube video of a facility tour, you can make sure that that's included. Is there, a checklist of things that they need on their first day? Make sure that they show up, with the right equipment or the right attire, like things of that nature. You can just make sure that it's getting done 100% of the time. And it's something that we actually use in our marketing and our BD prospecting as a way to pitch exclusivity with a client, because like some clients, this resonated so much. They're like, yeah, we don't want candidates coming from any other source. If you can guarantee us that they're going to receive this checklist of 5 things, every time they interview, every time somebody comes on site. So that's something I've seen be a very powerful and kind of resonate, especially on the client side.
Oh, that's huge. Minimizing the variables, I think, and that's the thing, is that everybody's informed. And so at least they're informed, and what they do with it is up to them, but at least they're informed. And I think from a process perspective, that's awesome. My number 4 is, again, it's re-engagement with a twist. And I've seen and talked to clients that this has really been important to them recently, is outreach to clients that have MSAs where they don't have anybody placed. And it's just a twist on that. They have an agreement. So in that case, it's, I always pitch the speed, the knowledge about the company and the inner workings, the, avoidance of red tape. As a staffing firm that has an MSA with a client, you avoid all that stuff. So if they need somebody quickly, you can deliver that. So that's what we've been honing in on. And if you have MSAs, I would definitely gather those up and put something together and talk about why they should be working with you. And again, it's solidifying the base, and I think that's a big one right now. And it's worked out really well. I've seen, we've had, I think 15% meeting rates to get a job rec. We've seen all sorts of good stats on these, and it's a warm lead in a way. So, all right, your last one.
Last one here. This is kind of more at the top of the funnel, so kind of more on the prospecting BD side, but a really cool kind of transformation I've seen done in a few different instances now, where obviously kind of traditional outreach, a lot of it is kind of cold and outbound, where you're just trying to put in kind of a volume of activity and hope a small percentage will yield a few leads. What I've seen work really well is, instead of kind of outbound cold calling that really large list, put them into a nurturing series of kind of that value add content, like I talked about earlier, and then include links, white papers, pages on your website, soft call to actions if you want. And then when you're doing that through automation, you can also trigger off of who's interacting with those links, who's going to your website, who's indicating a level of interest. And then you can have a follow-up go out, from a rep, from someone saying,
Yep.
Do you want to talk further? Here's my calendar link, to make it even easier to book time with me. I've seen one client example that jumps to the top of my mind. I've seen a client that they used to have a requirement where every sales rep had to do 70 cold calls per week. So that's what they did. Their team kind of hated it, but they were doing it to check a box. They kind of put this in place, gave it a little bit of time, optimized it. And what they were getting were qualified sales leads, booking time on their calendar, about 10 to 15 leads per week, just booking time already on their calendar. So they came in Monday morning, look at their calendar. I already got my 10 or 15 prospects and then the prospects have already indicated they're interested, they're qualified. So like, as you can imagine, that was a really well-received transformation for the business.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's, again, that's taking that welcome series to the next level. And it's really just, making sure that there's some engagement, follow-up and triggers there. So yeah, that's a good one. And then my last one is just, it's probably to your number 2, where it's the marketing your superstar candidates, is just doing skill-based MPC emails. I think, being able to hone in, not we've got great talent, here's who they are. It's just honing in on, do you need, great accounting managers, or we've got this skill set, and it's proactively putting those together and being able to take your superstars in one area and just stay in front of them. And I think that those are, it's instead of throwing everything, you're throwing the specific things. To your point, what they're looking for, and you're being able to put the right people in front of them. All right.
And I think that's where the data quality piece comes into play too, because, obviously knowing who your superstars are is part of that, but then also having those updated statuses and things gives you a level of business intelligence. Then you can say, with confidence, oh, we actually have X amount of this candidate, persona as an active or available or kind of currently looking, and with confidence that it means what it should mean, right? So then you can do things more proactively to kind of utilize that data and kind of weaponize it.
Yeah. I mean, and it brings some actual data to your talent pool. Like, we don't just have great talent, like everybody said. We got a ton of people. We got great talent, and it's just like, no, we have this many people ready to go, and it's just a matter of what do you like. It's almost an e-commerce type of play, where you're offering, this product or
Yeah.
service, like, and it's just a matter of you taking that and offering some scarcity. All right, well, let's quickly get through a couple of these. Want to leave room for some questions at the end. So best practices, I think. Let's go through kind of our best practices. You've set something up. What do you think? I mean, we've talked a ton about campaigns and everything else, and I'll let you start with your list of best practices here, and then we'll go through.
Yeah, I'll just go through high level because I think a lot of this we've kind of as talked, and we've kind of stepped through a few of the examples, which is great. Give you some more context. But I think the first one is standardizing your process and outreach. So it starts with understanding what that is, so mapping it. Then also it's designing it, brainstorming, what's the ideal version of it. Like a thought experiment I like to say to people is like, think of your best sales rep, find out what makes them your best sales rep. So find out what they do day to day. And then you can clone them with automation to ensure that your other sales reps are following that process, that protocol. So, and then you can ensure that it's happening 100% of the time with reminders, with automation. So that's kind of the first key. I really love using NPS, or just surveys in general, to measure satisfaction at the key stages, because then you can use that data to then find out if someone's having a great experience. Is it just good? What can we do to get better? Is it a bad experience? How can we fix that immediately so that doesn't spread or get worse? So, knowing where you're at in each of the stages is going to serve you really well. And you will never know unless you ask and measure that. And then lastly, leverage data. Like we gave some examples earlier about how you can use candidate data to better attract clients. Vice versa, you can better attract candidates with some client data. But leverage your secret power and superpower as a staffing firm is your automation data at scale, right? So you're able to have those market insights, that unique perspective of working with a huge client base, working with a huge candidate base. All of a sudden, you have a really good idea of what certain markets are looking for and looking like.
Awesome. Nice. Yeah, I'll go through mine pretty. I think we've talked about a lot of these. I mean, I'll always stress, use your CRM. Please use it. You have it. You may not like it, but use it. I think, again, cleaning up and leveraging your statuses. Start there. Start with your, to your point about standardizing process. Get a data dictionary. What do your statuses mean? And where should they go in there? I mean, that's a huge way in matching it with your sales funnel. Always one touch point's not enough, at least in my eyes.
Yeah.
It's got to be a series. What is it? 14 touches to get somebody to do something or something like that. I mean, it changes all the time, but basically you need multiple touch points. And then the last one is, I think there's an opportunity where if salespeople are scared of automation, or they just don't want it, or they don't think it's going to work, what I always say is, take a look at your leads. There's your A-level leads that you're going to want to talk to. You're going to want to be in front of. You're going to want to, do some business development. But let's take a look at those B and C, and let's put them in an automation funnel. And maybe instead of you reaching out 0 times or reaching out all the time, mix it up a little bit. So the A's stay with you. They don't get any automation because these are your targets. But the B's and C's, put them in an automation. And then what's nice is that everybody's getting some sort of touch point. And it also helps from a prioritization of follow-up. So I always tell people like to look at it that way. And if you don't believe it, it's a win-win, so like the automation's running, it's great. And maybe it gets you some leads, which it should. And you know what? Like you can stay with those A levels and you don't have to worry about, I don't want to send some, automated email out, something like that. So, all right. Last one here is, I guess, where to start. So I think, I'll say it again, commit to your CRM. So I'm going to just start right there. And I'll let you go next, but that one's always mine.
Yeah, I think, when you're starting out, focusing on kind of back to front. So focusing on those closest to the dollar activities, that's where you're going to drive kind of the biggest revenue impact, the most efficiency. So definitely kind of focus on that area first.
Yeah, I think, and we've mentioned it, standardized fields. I actually have start with closest to revenue as my bottom one there too, is work backwards. So
Nice.
We think alike there, probably because we're always under the gun to make sure we have ROI in our automation campaign. So you go with what's the quickest to revenue. But yeah, standardizing fields. It's the data dictionary approach. What are you using and what do they mean? Because those become your triggers. And I think understanding that is what gets people into an automation, but it also is what gets people out of certain automations.
Yeah.
What do you got?
And some stuff that we talked about already, like even your like ranking leads, like what are your A leads, B leads, C leads, that goes just a greater concept of ranking, prioritizing your job orders,
Yep.
your clients, your prospects, right? So it lets you prioritize, know where to focus, where you can automate. And it's a really great way to drive revenue and efficiency. And I noticed we both again share a common one here about mapping your process. So I think we're stumbling
Nerds.
across the same things. Yeah, but it's great. And obviously a confirmation that these are indeed the kind of the best practices of where to start and where to go.
Yeah, I think again, it's treating your statuses like a sales funnel, and making sure that like, yeah, this matches. I mean, it's all about matching. Automation should not be something different. It should complement what you're already doing and filling in those gaps, process and engagement. And we both want to work with sales teams, so we always talk about that. So
yeah, make sure you master that internal change management piece. That's always a key one for any technology.
Yeah. Well, if you haven't heard, Billy knows a lot about this stuff. So he is a guru. He's the master. What's nice about it, and I love this about Billy, is he's not a marketer. And so that's the most important thing is he's process, he's tech, he thinks beyond that. So I'll let you tell them all the stuff that you're doing and why they should subscribe. So you're on, man.
Yeah, so just a couple of things here to just kind of like if you're interested in more kind of automation best practices, I do a bunch and I've been doing it for about 5+ years on the content side, just trying to get some of that domain knowledge out of my head, what I've seen work well, case studies, tutorials, walkthroughs, that kind of stuff. So I do a weekly LinkedIn post every day, 11 a.m. Eastern on staffing automation best practices. I have a newsletter that goes out weekly with kind of a deep dive and more things. And then also kind of partnered internally at Bullhorn to create this connected recruiting methodology where we pull together best practices, case studies, testimonials, and disseminate that out so other clients can kind of learn and get kind of a quick lay of the land.
And you're gonna kill me on this one. Are you gonna be at Engage? Because you're gonna probably have a following and like probably bodyguards and everything else. So
I will be at Engage. Really excited. I have a breakout session that I'll be doing actually on sales and BD and relationship building. So again, it's something we're seeing
nice.
being a real focal point. And then really excited about the overall event. It's so fun to meet clients, colleagues and partners in person. So really excited for that. If you're going to be there,
I'll be
make
there.
sure to say hey.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'm excited about that. So, well, we're coming up on the hour, so I'm going to do one of two things. I don't see any questions in here. What I do want to be cognizant of is everybody's time. At the end of this, you're going to get a survey, and so if you do have questions, put the questions in there, and I'll make sure Billy and I answer them. You can get more information from him. Like I said, I want to be cognizant of everybody's time, so make sure you put the questions in. You can hit us both up on LinkedIn. Definitely connect with us on LinkedIn. Subscribe to his information on there. The newsletter's awesome. His 11 a.m. stuff. I actually steal a lot of that stuff and use it. So he doesn't know that, but now he does. But yeah, it's great stuff. A couple quick things before we wrap up. Yeah, we do have our Level Up ebook, and it goes through how to level up in this economy. We talk about sales, recruiting, marketing. It's free. You just go to haleymarketing.com/level-up. So definitely do that, take it, read it. We're doing a lot of presentations on it, and it's resonating really well. So we're happy to help out there. We do have our one resource area called Staffing Brain Fuel. You can go there. It's /Brain Fuel. You get ebooks, free articles, on-demand videos, anything like that. It's just a great resource center that we have for the staffing industry. We do have our digital marketing bundles. So we have, sort of this marketing department in a can, in a box, where we offer some of the top marketing, pieces for you, marketing services. So take a look at that at digital or /digital-marketing-bundles. What else? Oh, and we're doing a 30-point review of your website. So if you're interested in best practices, what's going on, a lot of Google changes right now. Is your website prepared to take on candidates and client leads? So if you go to haleymarketing.com/website review, we'll do a free review, 30-point review there, and operators are standing by for that one. So definitely take advantage of that. You get some good insights and see what you want to do with your website. Things are always changing with these websites, so definitely make sure you do that. And then finally, our next lunch with Haley. Note the day and time change. Summer vacations here, so we're making a change. We usually do it on Thursdays, but it'll be Wednesday, June 21st at 3 p.m. We're going to talk about nurturing, and it's going to be how to stay top of mind and ahead of the pack with clients and what we can do. So definitely sign up for that and make sure that you're there for that one. So with that, I'm going to say thank you, Billy. It's been awesome. Always awesome to talk to you. Definitely sign up for all his stuff, and I appreciate it. And everybody have a great time. Great day.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. It was a blast. Take care, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great one.